So this is from Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Twos, verse 12. And this refrain is found in many suttas. The Buddha says, "Bhikkhus, I have personally known two things: non-contentment in regard to wholesome qualities, and tireless striving." And then the refrain that comes in, he says, "I strove tirelessly with this attitude in mind. Willingly let only my skin, sinews and bones remain, and let the flesh and blood dry up in my body. But I will not relax my energy, so long as I have not attained what can be attained by manly strength, energy and exertion." And it was by that type of heedfulness that I achieved liberation, that I achieved unsurpassed security from bondage.
It comes down to the obvious. In order to do the right effort, you need to know what the right effort is. Because usually that that very passage is interpreted in a way that it just means this unwavering, blind determination. Like, I just determine that I will not move from here until I become enlightened.
So the classic, like, I watch my breath. I've heard about anapanasati, so now I'm going to focus my breath until my knees pop out of the sockets.
So that's misguided on various levels. First level being, so do you know what enlightenment is? Do you know exactly? Oh, I'm right here now. My mind is free from this much and not free from these things and so on. This is the work I need to do to be enlightened. As the Buddha would say, like, a person who understands, he knows what needs to be done. He can see the extent of his mind that needs to be developed. So do you see that for yourself before you make a determination? Oh, okay, so this is what I need to do and train to reach the complete enlightenment. But then you realize, no, you don't know that. Yet here you are determining that you will not move, breathe or whatever else until you become enlightened. So you don't know what enlightenment is, yet you're making determination towards enlightenment. So then that's what I mean, it's misguided, because in a sense your determination is real. I mean, there were people who fully committed to this. But the point is, you commit out of this faith that enlightenment will happen to you if you exhibit unwavering determination, regardless of whether you know the goal or not.
Right. You just want it hard enough.
I want it so much that I will sacrifice my life in hope that it will happen to me.
Right.
They will be given to me. And that's not enlightenment already. So that's when you read this passage, when the Buddha describes the let my sinews dry up, my blood dry up, and my like just bones and sinews left, and so on. It's to the point of you know exactly what needs to be done, and you will not be careless in regard to that. So it's what we said in other talks. Like, for example, you recognize that a thought of sensuality is not your problem. Accepting the thought of sensuality, welcoming, delighting in it, not seeing through it, not seeing the nature of it, that is your problem. That's where the problem's there. So now you kind of already are distinguishing where the work is. The work is on the level of not entertaining sensuality, not being careless about it, not doing things that will bring sensuality to increase and non-sensuality to decrease. And now I will determine that I will not waver in that regard. So regardless of what scenario I'm in, what circumstances are there, whenever there is a sensual thought, I will not give in to it. So once you clarify what the work is, what needs to be done, what the training is, you make a determination that to that extent of the training, you will not compromise it. That doesn't, and then you realize, okay, so that doesn't mean I need to sit and not breathe until I reach enlightenment and die unless no, it just means I know what the work is, and I will never compromise on that knowledge. And that's exactly whatever is to be obtained by the manly effort. Oh, so what can you do with the manly effort? Well, you can do that which you know how to do. You can't have manly effort, but you don't know what you're supposed to do with it. So with manly effort, manly restraint, with determination, with the unwavering commitment, I will not tolerate sensuality. I don't need to get rid of everything and die in some little hole, not eating and not drinking water until I become enlightened. No. But I will not tolerate sensuality, regardless of what circumstances throw at me, for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I will not tolerate ill will with a manly effort, manly restraint, manly commitment for the rest of my life. Oh, if it's non-ill will, fine. I don't need to train that because it's not ill will. I don't need to train that because it's not sensuality. So that entire thing that he determined was based upon fully discerned path of what needs to be done. So unless you know what needs to be done, your determination will be misguided. So you should then, instead of determining that like a wishful way, oh, may my bones dry up and I will never move unless I become enlightened, whatever enlightenment might be, instead of doing that, which can be very intoxicating, because that determination, just making a blind determination is, it brings lots of energy behind it. So you can feel very good. But the point is, but is it rooted in knowledge? Is it rooted in exactly what you need to do? Or is it rooted in wishful thinking? And as the Buddha said himself, the path cannot be obtained by wishing alone. Oh, may I become enlightened? But are you doing the things that lead to enlightenment? Well, I don't know. Well, then you won't become enlightened.
Someone say, I might not know what enlightenment is, or exactly how to get there.
There you go. So then, instead of your determination being on that level, when you don't even know what it is, why don't you scale it down a bit and actually apply to things you can know? Okay, so I don't know what enlightenment is. How about I determine I will not rest until I find out what enlightenment is? There you go. That's your work already. Find out. Not entertain wishful thinking about enlightenment will happen to me on account of these random practices that I took on faith and mere faith alone. So then you start, how do you know what enlightenment is? Well, start reading the Buddha's words. Start thinking about it. Start reflecting it. Start questioning what you understood and removing basically layer by layer by layer. Determine that until you know that you know, you will not rest. Until you get the right view, you will not rest. Doesn't mean you'll never sleep. Means you will never forget that that is your goal. You will never sit down and say, no, I won't think about the Dhamma now. Not because I have something else to do, it's simply because I don't want to. You won't do that because you're determined to not do that. So when you can, you will do it. You will reflect, you will learn, and then you'll get to know what enlightenment is, and then you'll know what you need to do, and then you apply the same type of determination to exactly the right extent, the middle way. Not too much to the point of, as the Buddha himself tried before, I'll stop breathing and I'll die. No, that was an ignoble way, as ignorant as sensuality is.
It's conceited.
Fully. Nothing really gets uprooted there. So you want to discern the extent of the training, what the actual training is. Oh, this is the training, okay, but do I see that for myself, or have I just repeated what I heard from somebody else? Even if that thing is right thing that you heard from somebody else, okay, so you're doing it, but are you seeing now how that is the training? To what extent your mind is trained? Where is your responsibility with it? The clearer you become about that, the easier will be to determine the right effort towards it. The only reason people can't determine the effort towards enlightenment is because they don't have a clue what it is. They don't even know where to start. And you, as you know yourself, whenever you want to try learning new things, beginning is always the hardest because you can't even master that strength to begin, because you just imagine this, you don't know anything about it. But instead of projecting, like you want to learn a new language, instead of projecting your determination on the level of being fluent, how about I maybe just make a determination to spend 5 minutes reading the other language a day? No more than that, just 5 minutes. But do it consistently. Doesn't matter what comes out of it, I'll just do this. And then before you know it, you're much more familiar. The more familiar you become, the new options, the new ways of furthering that training will present themselves now, because you actually started building it up from the right level, from the bottom up. Not like, I don't know anything in between me and enlightenment. I'll just determine the enlightenment and then wish it will happen to me, missing all the other steps in between. So that's why, as the Buddha said, it cannot be obtained by the wishing alone. It just doesn't work like that.
And the first thing he said, I knew non-contentment with wholesome qualities.
Well, that's the thing. But not knowing really what the training is, not knowing what the wholesome is, you will be discontent in the face of wholesome. You haven't learned the content of the wholesome, because you don't see it for what it is. And then consequently you will be content with the unwholesome. With the actually harmful for you, you'll be content.
So he was non-content with the wholesome
He was
qualities.
non-content with the wholesome qualities, because the contentment out of the wholesome will not come automatically. You need to develop it on account of sticking to the wholesome. And that's why it's so hard, and that's why, as I said so many times before, you cannot arrive at the Dhamma accidentally. Because see, you got the wholesome thing, but it doesn't feel right. You're discontent about it. But if you discern that it's the right thing, as the Buddha himself did, and he stuck to it, the contentment arose from it. And then it was effortless. Then the tireless energy arises, because it's the energy you are not making. It's the energy that's discerning the things. Like we spoke before, the effortless mindfulness. If mindfulness is done correctly, it is effortless. It doesn't require your determination. And you're holding it and doing it. It's effortless because it's in the things themselves, in the nature of awareness, the nature of being alive. It's already has a degree of mindfulness in it. So it's discerning that and tapping into that on account of right restraint, right effort, rounding it up, building it up. Then it's effortless. And that's why you can't have too much of it or too little of it. It's just effortless because it's just part of the experience as a whole.
So yeah, when I suppose most people read that, let my bones, my blood dry up and so on. It means like ascetic practice.
Yeah, it means this intense, and you can take it that way.
Sure.
And it might be wholesome, but wholesomeness or usefulness of it will not be determined by your determination or by the extent of your determination. It will be determined by whether you know what enlightenment is, what the training is, or you don't know. So that's why for some people, the Buddha said, by all means, you have to do these ascetic practices. But for some people, you shouldn't. But that's not measured by you deciding whether you should or shouldn't. It's measured by you knowing what enlightenment is and then seeing what supports it and what doesn't support it. What supports maintenance of that middle way and what kind of overshoots it or undershoots it. So the measure is the knowledge. The measure of your determination is the knowledge of the path. The right view, what enlightenment is. Then you'll know to what extent. That's why he did not, when those monks, Devadatta asked him to make these ascetic practices, which are very noble and lofty, to make them mandatory for every monk. And the Buddha said no, because actually that would be detrimental for some monks. Some mind, once they know the enlightenment, if they go too far into ascetic, they will obscure the right level of training of enlightenment. They will not uproot the kilesa. Some mind, if they know the enlightenment, they need the ascetic level to reach that right threshold. That's why it cannot be made as a blanket rule, you must do this, you must do that. Because, literally, not two minds are the same. Not two minds are on the same level.
I think in society now, it errs on the side of indulgence. You're way too comfortable. Ascetic practices.
It does. And ascetic practices always, even back in the Buddha's day, were always more inspiring. That's what Buddha say. If you can do the ascetic practices without compromising the level of training for enlightenment, you are practicing for the future generations. Then future generations are going to be inspired on account of enlightenment because they don't have a clue what that is. But they will be inspired on account of your ascetic practice. And you always see that. Whenever somebody is ascetic, it's always more inspirational. Yeah. That's just factual. But it doesn't necessarily mean that at the individual level it's more wholesome. Now, sensuality must be abandoned one way or the other. So when we say that sometimes asceticism is not wholesome, doesn't mean, oh, so yeah, I can just stay in sensuality. No. That's completely the other level. They must be abandoned through and through.
Like celibacy is not an option. Like
celibacy is not optional. So when we talk about asceticism, we're not talking about the 8 precepts. We're talking about taking the 8 precepts on a whole new level of like eating just unhusked rice, one handful of it, wearing rag robes, sleeping under, never sleeping under a root of a tree, never taking medicine,
never laying down.
Those are the ascetic practices. So yes, that's a good point, because some listener might confuse, thinking, oh, I mustn't go into asceticism too much, thus I don't have to be celibate. No, that's absolutely 8 precepts is the minimum for training towards the enlightenment. 5 precepts is the minimum for basically distinguishing yourself from an animal behavior, as the Buddha said, like a wholesome worldly behavior that does not lead to enlightenment, just leads to wholesome behavior and wholesome karma and wholesome results of karma. But if you want to practice towards enlightenment and train for it, 8 precepts is the minimum. But now 8 precepts for somebody who want to really be fully enlightened, as that the line says, might not be enough. So it doesn't mean you introduce 16 precepts and 54. Just means the principles of the 8 precepts, now you need to amplify even more. So like not sleep laying down.
Yeah, if you
again, not out of because you read that such and such great Ajahn did that and you're inspired to like show how manly you are, and I know. It's because you actually see that laying down always makes you wake up with lust, carelessness, anger, and then takes you 4 hours to undo it. So what if I don't lay down? There you go. You got a practical basis for your ascetic practice, but based on knowledge what needs to be developed. So if you don't have the knowledge for yourself, clearly distinguish, free from doubt, what needs to be developed, any of these determination practices will be utterly misguided and all going to amplify your conceit, as they did to every single ascetic giant back in the day that the Buddha mocked and said they were completely wrong and misguided. So instead, your determination should be pointed to that which you know that you can develop, such as I can become familiar with all the suttas. My determination can basically make me read all the suttas daily and make the effort. And when I finish, I start again and again and again until I get the clarity of the message. Now, you do need determination for that, to do it every day, to read it and read it and read it, to familiarize yourself with Pali. You need determination for that. To keep the precepts, you need determination for that. So all these things you can actually have a vast amount of effort applied, full on determination, and not as misguided, because you can actually develop this. You're not waiting for enlightenment to happen on account of I'll just never do this, never do this, never do that, for no practical basis. You don't see the reason why you shouldn't do that. I'll never lay down. Yeah, but why? Is laying down unwholesome, like having a sexual intercourse, lying, or killing? Well, no. So where is your determination based upon? Based in. So that's what I mean. There's no practice without the right view. We said it millions of times before. So you determining the end game of the practice without even knowing what the practice is just contradiction in terms.
Right.